Now that we have multiple queue lists, let's see how we can interact with them. When we recorded our queue list 2, it automatically loaded onto our first available fader, and we can manage that location just like we can with any other target. So if I press and hold my shift button and I hit my load button, that will unload that queue list from that fader. I haven't deleted it, it's just no longer mapped. Don't forget, if you're on non-motorized hardware, your load button is accomplished by pressing the 2 lower buttons below the fader. If we want to reload that queue list, we can simply say q2/, which will give us the whole queue list, hit the load button, and it will reappear back on that fader. Don't forget, we can also use the load button to put queues into pending. So right now, if you look at my master fader pair, Q102 is on stage and Q102.5 is pending. So right now, if I were to hit go, Q102.5 would fade on stage. I can also say Q1/13 and hit load, and now Q13 is pending. You'll also notice a little bit of movement, and that's because now that the board knows where it's going to try and move in dark or mark all of the lights that it can before making the transition. So oftentimes, if you're in production, loading is more elegant than a go to queue if you have to skip some queues. One of the playback specific functions that we can use in our playback buttons is off. So if I press and hold off and hit the master fader pair, you'll notice that it fades all of my lights to 0 and puts them back to home. And that's because the off command is returning all of these channels to their previous owner. Because nothing owned these channels before queue list 1, they return to their home state. You'll notice, however, that Q102 is still listed as loaded on stage, and Q13 is still pending. So if I hit go, it's going to fade up into my pending queue, which is Q13. I can also use release and load, and what the release function is going to do is the same as the off function, in that it's going to return those channels to their previous owner. But the difference is it will set us back to Q0 so that Q1, or the first queue in the list, is listed in pending. Now when I hit go, we're starting at the top of our queue list as opposed to resuming like we did with off. Also, don't forget that in settings, you have the ability to set different times for your off and release functions, and those times can be macroed so you can change them quickly.